Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today our pandemic project is the Daiwa J2600. This reel is typical of a reel from the 1980s, late 70s, 80s. It's got a metal case. It's got fancy paint that made it something other than silver. It was probably matched up on a rod and reel combination. This reel was made in Korea, and you know it's in the 80s because we've got a graphite. Oh, you got a metal spool there. So it's pre-graphite in terms of dating, and we'll take this apart. We'll show you how to service this reel, what's made of inside, clean it up a little bit. You can see we got a lot of dirt on here, and put it together and get it out there fishing. So we're going to start by removing the exterior parts. This time around I'm going to start with taking off the drag knob. It looks like we've got some rust on these things, so it's probably an indication of a lower end reel. These should be stainless. In this case it looks like it's just steel, but we'll come back and service the top in just a little bit. Underneath that spool you have a shim washer and a click ratchet. We're going to try and take those off. That'll enable us to remove the rotor and service underneath there. And then this one's never easy. I'm going to grab a pair of pliers and you can usually pull that up. And you need that in order to remove the rotor, which is going to be a top-sided rotor. Now we'll take the handle off. Handle comes off in a clockwise direction. That means it's got a threaded gear. Some of them have pass-throughs where the backside of this spins as a screw, but in this case this one's screwed into the gear. And then we're going to take the 3 side plate screws out, and these have been nested there for quite some time. If you like to facilitate this, put a little penetrating oil on them. I'm going to guess this reel probably never even had a service done on it. This is probably one of those reels that's sort of a cabin or a cottage reel. Based on the usage on this thing for the dating, I'd say it was only used maybe a dozen times, 2 dozen times. I'm not seeing any indication of serious paint wear whatsoever on this reel, and I'm seeing a lot of dirt. That usually means it's been sitting in storage, and it usually means that the usage was maybe a couple of times a year, and that's why I call them cabin or cottage reels. Typically it's something that you buy, bring up to the cabin or down to the beach house or wherever, and you leave it there for a guest who might want to go do some fishing, and that's when it sees its opportunity to do what it's supposed to do. Alright, one more screw here. I've laid them out on my table because I want to make sure that the screws are all the same size. They are. So on the way back in, doesn't really matter where we put them. I have the clicker on. I want to take that off just so that when I pull stuff, if there's a dog, an anti-reverse dog that's engaged, that I don't rip it off of something. And here we go. That's so if I went to have that engaged, there's a good chance that I would have ripped out the dog mechanism or pushed the spring or something like that. Relatively simple design, and I was mentioning before about removing the rotor. Really don't need to because we have a E-clip or a C-clip here. C-clip. It's going to enable us to do that. If you just pull up on this little clip that rides in a groove, you'll be able to remove your whole rotor. And there's nothing under there, so that there's no anti-reverse. Typically, if you had to remove this pinion gear, you could take that off, but there's no sense doing that. There's no need to. So let's just go lay that off to the side for a moment. You'll notice I'm putting these pieces into my parts tray. That's a good way to know where they are when I go to reinstall. A lot of times people ask me, where does this spring go? They'll show me a picture of a spring. Take pictures along the way as you're taking your project on. There's a little spring here that controls the tension on that anti-reverse. It's held in place with this case, so make sure that that it doesn't go flying, and if it does go flying, that you notice where it is by taking pictures of it. I'm going to kind of leave it there and just kind of trust my luck. I'm going to remove the axle shaft here. Just so I can clean the inside of the body of this reel. Put that piece into my parts tray, grab the axle shaft, put that off to the side. And they're not fancy metals at all. I call them pot metal. I'm not quite sure what the official type of metal is, but it's generally a lower end type of metal used in the reel. And again, it's another indication of the pricing on this reel. I'm just going to do a cleanup because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of dust and dirt on here. I'm going to use a general degreaser called Purple Power, and it's a concentrated. I kind of use it at full strength concentrate, but that helps get all the old grease off and shine it up while it's at it. So let's go ahead and do that while we have this off. And all of us are wondering, is that screw going to stay in there? Is that spring going to stay in the case while I do this? And I guess the short answer is it did. So there you go. Alright, nice clean case there. Let's go over to the business side of this with the main gear. So the main gear has two features here. It has the gear that drives the spool turning, and it also has the crosswind arm, which is what popped out there. And that crosswind arm is used to move the spool up and down. So we've got one feature going up and down, one feature converting the energy to side, round and round. Alright, just cleaning out the old grease, and this is my best guess that this has never been serviced. You know, just because it's a lower end reel doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be serviced. And folks ask me what the recommended service intervals are, and my general response to that is once a year, even if it's a cabin reel. I mean, it doesn't take long to do this. Clearly the price point on this reel probably says, you know, professionals need not apply kind of deal, because it probably costs you more to have the service done than this reel cost at the time. But you can do it yourself. That's the whole purpose of these videos here, to show you how to do it and help you along the way if help is needed. Alright, so we've checked the teeth. You want to make sure that they're not chipped or cracked. Check them this way to make sure that there's no warping or distortion. Kind of been doing that in the background as I've been cleaning, but wanted to make you aware of it. Put some grease onto that. Put some grease onto the shaft here. This is an interesting shaft. It doesn't have a bushing. It's just riding in the case. It's using the case as a bushing there. Alright, let's go back. There was nothing to do in this rotor, but there is cleaning to be done. So let's grab that degreaser again. This is a good time to spool off and everything, to get behind the pieces that you can't simply reach with a cloth or a rag. And I generally use paper towels. The reason for that is I don't like to transfer grease from one reel to another, and if you use the rags, they tend to accumulate that grease. So now I'm just cleaning up the side posts, which you can get at with a cotton swab like I'm doing here. Get all that old storage dust and grime off. The only thing you can't clean basically is what's happening with that spool there. It's UV damage, and there's no easy way around that. Folks ask, you know, what can I use on it? The short answer is you can't. But do your best to keep them clean otherwise. Alright, we're going to take this then. All of these gears are clean, which means that the lubrication that was on there has long since evaporated or dried and went to the bottom of the case or whatever, but we're going to give that a good dose of grease. I'm going to take the rotor then and put that back on. And we're going to look in our parts tray and find that little U-clip. And yes, that little spring for the anti-reverse override is still there. I'm pressing my luck. Okay, after we finish cleaning up then, let's go ahead and reinstall. We're going to take that crosswind block. Now that crosswind block can go either way, so you better have a good memory, or you better go back to your pictures you took if you're wondering which way it did go. I'm going to put a little grease in this travel slot here for the the bottom of the crosswind block. And if you weren't paying attention, the crosswind block goes to the outside here. Okay, it could easily go inside, and then you'd find out you're stuck. So remember which way these things go, or refer back to your pictures if you're kind of questioning which way it went. All right, the main gear then, we've checked the teeth when we were cleaning, getting a little bit of grease on it now. Getting grease onto the shaft here. Now that shaft, there's no bushing for that shaft. It simply goes right into the case and uses the case as a bushing. That's another indication of the construction of this reel, as well as the cost-saving measures, if you will. Clean off the axle shaft. If there was any wear or tear or something stuck on here, then go ahead and use some steel wool or something to do that. I put grease on this. Richard just sent me a comment on another one that says he prefers oil. I put grease on there because I don't think this reel is going to get serviced every year, which is what it should be. My guess is that this reel will probably find its way like it did in prior history and probably be that cabin or cottage reel and sit there for a very long time. So the advantages to the grease is that it's not going to evaporate as quickly or run off. It will stay there. The disadvantages, as Richard will tell you, is that if it dries, it will bog down the performance on this reel. And he prefers oil, but then again, he's going to take care of his reel very differently probably than folks that get this reel. All right, main gear, no bushing, right into the case. Line it up. Crosswind arm. There's two sides, kind of a rounded shiny side and the dull side. The dull side is what's going to ride against the gear, so let's put a little bit of grease on that. Get that over the loop, and then let's match that to the stud here that it rides on. Just like that. Then we can give it a spin, make sure that it's traveling right. And there we go. It's doing what it should be doing. All right, we have this in the off position. Time to load the case. Watch that spring. You want to slide this long stud on this side of that plastic marker, then bring the case up. Then you can trip it with this. Give it a spin, make sure it's turning. Give it a spin, make sure that the anti-reverse is on. And you can take those case nuts, put them back in. We have a cleaner reel now, that's nice. And we'll go up top, we'll show you the drag system on this and see if we have to do anything with that. Okay, so those screws still have the penetrating oil on them, which is good. That'll act as an anti-seizure, kind of a lubrication for the next generation, if you will. I'll grab that. The handle, put a little drop of oil onto the handle screw. And tighten that up. And also put a little bit of the oil into the center. It's a nice spinning reel for its design and price point. Okay, there's a hexagonal clip and riding in a groove in the spool. Let's get that out of there. And I use a pick. I'm not expected to see too much here. All right, we have a lot of accumulated dirt. So I'm going to use that penetrating oil again. Start with a cotton swab. See if we can't clear it out with that. It's not unusual to find the dirt in there because it's taking the brunt of the water as it's being reeled in is splashing on top of this spool. I'm going to go with a towel to wipe that out, make sure that's clean. And you can see the UV damage to the extent that there is damage on this. And there's nothing you can do about that. You could use leather cleaner and other things, I guess, like they use on cars, but eventually it'll wear off. It's hiding it as opposed to making it work. This is a felt washer, interestingly enough, with a little bit of a bell washer or spring. That spring goes in first. The felt washer now needs to be flexible, and it is, so we're in good stead with that. You can put that in, and then what keeps it flexible is oil. So get some fishing reel oil. Kind of douse it pretty good there. And then we have this washer here that's got a little bit of the build up there and some rust on it. That's because it just sat there and whatever it was used in, it just rusted through. It's not important on the top. It's important on the bottom that this be smooth, and it is. The top, it's more cosmetic, and we're just going to put it back in there. It's more of a stain at this point than it is anything else, but you're not going to get it back to shiny. It's rusted through the metal at that point. Just drop my glove in there. Drop my finger. There you go. All right, let's get that into the slot all around. The clip doesn't do anything but hold those drags in. Go ahead and put that. Just as I was checking the bottom, there's a little bit of dirt in there. So I don't know where this reel was fished, but it's very clean. So I don't know if it was freshwater or saltwater. Either way, it's designed for medium to large fish. It's a 60 class kind of a reel. That's what the 6 and the 2600 is, the 60. Oops. And see, that's where the value of the parts tray goes, because I did an unnecessary step and I pulled the click assembly off, and I pulled the shim washer off, and out of habit I went to put that spool back on, realizing that the click was not installed yet. That click is used for two things. It's spool height, and it tells you when you're spinning in reverse, when the drag is running out. All right, I'm going to tighten that down. There you go, drag's working fully. All right, last thing we're going to do then, we're going to throw a little bit of oil onto your bail. I guess with the bail this age, if this wasn't tripping easily, which it is, you probably would go back and see if there's any accumulated dirt underneath it too. But again, I haven't found any evidence of dirt. I found a lot of evidence of dust, but not dirt on this reel. So that's it. That's how you do a Daiwa J2600. If you find one at a local yard sale or tag sale or flea market or eBay or something, it's worth the price. It's a nice reel. It's a solid design. It's not overly engineered. There's not a ball bearing to be found in it, but that doesn't matter. The bushing, even using the cases, the bushing was fine. The metals inside of it are good. They're probably better than today's standards in a lot of regards. And it's a solid 60 size reel that's going to go out there and help you catch some fish. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're a first responder, thank you for all it is that you've been doing during the pandemic. If you're not a first responder, please listen to them. Wear the masks, maintain the social distance, listen to the authorities and what it is we're being asked to do. Please stay safe, stay well, and hopefully stay fishing. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.